Hi, it's Rob from Kiravans, and in this video we're going to have a look at the installation process for our double seat swivel in a VW transporter. The current model of swivel fits in a T6.1, T6, T5, and in this video we'll have a look at the differences in installation between those different models. What's in the box? First of all, we're now including a QR code on all of our boxes which will link you to our workshop website page, which has fitting videos, instructions, hints and tips. And inside the box, as always, double swivel made out of 2 sheets of steel with a super slippy tie bar layer in between, and 4 locking bolts to keep it secure when you're driving. A couple of optional extras. We now have a bag of additional cabling components which are needed for T6.1 or any van that's got electrically heated seats or seatbelt sensors. So if you sit on the seat, there's a ping that goes off on the dashboard if you haven't got your seat belt on. You need that wiring kit for those models. We also have a trim accessory, which is a metal plate and carpet to go over the top of the swivel inside your seat base, basically to stop any small things getting tangled up in the mechanism. So let's have a look through this video in how to install it in a van, how to use the additional wiring kit, and then finally we'll have a look at how to operate it day-to-day life inside a camper van. 2 things to be aware of before you start installing your double swivel. If your van has had a bulkhead in it, which is most of them, you'll probably still have a metal strip sticking up from the floor behind your passenger seat. That needs to come out. It's welded on, and we've done a separate video to show you how to remove that. There's also some components inside the seat, including wiring and brackets, which we'll have a look at now. Inside your seat base, you'll see a number of plastic brackets that are going to need to be removed so that we can disconnect the cables before fitting the double swivel. You'll also find in some van models some plastic cladding which is covering the plugs. These just pull off. In a T6.1, we've got some additional cables going up to the seat which are used for heated seats and for weight sensors for your seatbelt alarms. To remove the brackets, you'll need to use a T30 Torx screwdriver. There's a couple of screws on the top of the frame and a couple further down on the side. On some van variants, you'll also find additional plugs strapped underneath the angled bracket. These are the ones that go to the seat base for weight sensors and for heated seats. These will also need to be removed. In this particular case, it's simply a case of pressing the tab on the side or prising it open with a screwdriver, but there are quite a number of variations in different van models. Having disconnected all of your cable brackets, it's now a case of removing the 8 nuts that hold the seat to the floor. And then you'll be able to lift the seat out into the back of your van. Having removed the seat, we're then left with a pile of cables, plugs and plastic connectors sitting on the floor. We need to hide these underneath the rubber floor mat before we can fit our double swivel. So in each case, it's a case of removing the plastic cladding. The actual plugs you have will depend on your van model. In this one, we've got a single fuse in a fuse bracket, in a fuse holder, attached to a plastic clip. It's a simple press stud to remove that. Every van has something that looks like this with 5 or 6 male and female multicolored plug sockets. In this van, they come apart very easily by simply pressing down the tab with your thumbnail. In previous versions, it is a bit more fiddly and it needs a very fine, flat-headed screwdriver to slide down inside the plug and release a catch. There's quite a lot of videos on YouTube that show you how to do those. Each plug, as we disconnect it, we slide it out of the bracket and then reconnect the male and female sides back together again. Once we've disconnected all of the plugs, we can dispose of the plastic bracket that was holding it in place underneath your seat base. So all of these plugs and cables are now going to get tucked away underneath the flap into the tunnel which is built into the floor of your van, and that will slide them over towards your handbrake, where they can lie pretty much flat underneath the floor of your van. You'll see there's quite a deep recess in there. Our swivel actually has a slight lifted tunnel down the middle of it as well, so you don't have to get the plugs completely flat, but the flatter you can get it, the easier it'll be to install your swivel and the less chance there is of damaging anything. In general, we quite like to protect these plug sockets by wrapping them in electrical tape. It's simply a case of folding a wire over so that the wires come out at one end. Wrap the whole lot in electrical tape and put some tape going in the opposite direction. So you end up with a reasonably watertight packet should there be any condensation, or if you have an accident and get water onto the floor of your van. The only ones that don't go under are the separate cables for your heated seats, airbags and weight sensors for your seat belts. So in this part of the video we're going to have a look at the cabling which is for heated seats, seat belt sensors and for airbags. So these are the wires that we identified looking inside the seat at the beginning of this video. In this particular case I've got 4 plugs, each of which has got 2 wires. Now these need to go through the swivel and connect back inside the seat. So our swivels now come with a holey bolt in the middle, which allows us to put cables through. However, the hole is too small for these plugs to go through, and the cables from VW are too short. So in your kit you'll find selection of wires, 2 different diameters. They're all different colours so we can identify which wire we're using. And then we have got 2 different types of clips. Blue ones are for wider cables, wider diameter. Red ones are for the majority of them. In this particular van we've got 8 cables. They're all different colours associated with different plugs. Before we start we need to draw a picture of what these are, because this is all going to be underneath our swivel and we need to know the green plug inside the seat, which of our extension wires we're going to be connecting to it. So in this case I've got a green plug with a purple and a black red. I need to draw that on a bit of paper, and I need to decide that I'm going to extend that with 2 other wires. In this case I've got my orange and my blue, and these have spade connectors on one end. These simply snap in, and very important, we draw on our diagram that we've connected our green plug, purple wire, to our orange extension. Those need to be taped up with a bit of black electrical tape to make sure they don't come out. We'll repeat that for all the different plugs. The other end of our wires don't have any terminals on them, so these wires are going to be able to go through our swivel, through the bolt in the middle, which is going to sit on top, and then these wires are going to connect back inside our seat to the corresponding plug and cables inside the seat. Now the bolt itself, we've had this specially designed so there's enough space there for all of our cables, and we've put a smooth surface on it so it doesn't cause any abrasion on it. The swivel, when it goes on top, will cover that, and as the seat moves around there's enough length of cable to allow it to stretch as the seat moves around. Before we can fit the swivel onto the floor of our van, we now need to do a little trimming exercise on the floor studs. The top of these studs has got about 5mm, which is not threaded. What we want to do is cut that off. So the easiest way of doing it is to put a nut onto the bolt till you get to the bottom of the unthreaded section, and then use a hacksaw to simply cut it off. Use a fresh, clean hacksaw blade and it'll go through it quite easily. If you don't fancy cutting it, then you do have one other option, which is to lift your swivel up using some washers. We find 3 washers will work, and that will then mean that your swivel can sit on top and it'll be lifted up high enough that when you rotate it, it doesn't catch on the top of these floor studs. Downside of that is that your seat will be half a centimetre higher than it needs to be. So our strong recommendation is that you cut half a centimetre off the top of all 8 of these floor bolts. Then put your swivel on top. With the swivel on top and you've threaded the wires through the hole in the middle, we then need to lock it down. We simply unscrew the 4 locking bolts. They've got little pins so you can unscrew them and lift the bolt up out of the way. We can then access the locking the floor bolts and reapply our original 8 nuts. In doing this, safest way of doing it, easiest way of doing it, is to go around all 8 bolts and loosely put the nuts on first. If you try and put them all super tight on one corner first, then you'll find that the swivel gets bent and it won't rotate very easily. So just put them all on loosely, and then having got all 8 on, work your way around tightening them up. You'll find that we've left gaps in the swivel so that you can access all of them. We've now got the swivel secured down to the floor of our van. In the case of a 6.1, we've got our cables coming up through the holey bolt. We now have an option. If we want to, we can fit our metal plate and carpet over the top. If it's got wires coming through, they go through the hole in the middle. Important that you put the plate on before you fit your seat on top. When we drop the seat in again, just make sure you're not cutting any wires. It'll fit on top of your 8 bolts. We then need to bolt that down using the 8 washers and nuts that we've supplied. In the case of a 6.1, we now need to reconnect our cables to the sockets that are inside our seat base. So the drawing I've done, or photograph, I've got the purple wire underneath the floor, goes into the side of the green socket furthest away from the clip. You can see a little piece coming out, and we want to reconnect that to the appropriate wire inside the seat. So we use one of our red connector clips. You'll see that there's 2 holes in it, one of which has got a blanking end on it. So that's where our extension cable is going to go. The other half is for connecting onto the outbound wire from our socket in the seat. So we can slide that in. That one will go straight through and it can slide up and down the wire. On the other half of the socket, of the connector, we'll be able to put our extension cable in, and you'll see that doesn't go through all the way because it hits the blank at the end. It goes in about 1 centimetre so you can tell that you're in the right place. Then to make the connection, we hold the wires in place, and we need to push the metal pin straight through both cables. What it does is it cuts through the insulation on the outside of the cable to the metal inside and makes a connection with it. A pair of pliers is the easiest way to do that. Once you've pressed it down, you want to check that the metal connector is flush with the plastic, it's not sticking up. Just run a fingernail across it, and if you need to, give it another squeeze. So in this particular cable, it started off underneath the seat as a purple wire, which went into the side of the green socket furthest away from the clip. We added on a red extension. That's come up through the holey bolt, through our swivel, and we've now connected it onto the appropriate outbound cable from our male-female end of the plug inside the seat. It's a good firm connection. We need to repeat that with every single one of the cables that we've put up through the holey bolt. Really, really important that your drawing that you've done or the photographs you've taken when you put your extensions on are really clear so that you know which wires you're connecting to which outbound wires. Unfortunately, VW don't use the same color coding on every single van. Having got the connectors on, we need to just rehouse these plugs into the bracket that's inside your seat base. Grab together all of the wires and wrap them up in some electrical tape to give them some protection, so that you end up with a nice tight, tidy connection of all of your wires, so that nothing can get caught on any of your luggage. And if you have plastic trim panels that you can put inside the seat base, put them back on, and that will give everything some extra protection. So that was an example looking at one plug, the two wires coming into it, connecting into the original plug underneath your seat base, passing the wires up through the holey bolt in the middle of your swivel, then using our clips to attach them back onto the wires inside your seat base, clipping them into place and tidying up after yourself. It's worth saying that there are two different sizes of wires in your kit. The thicker ones are used for heated seats. You'll find the original wiring inside your seat has got thicker wires on it. So we're replicating that diameter of cable. Everything else is with the thinner wires. We've provided a whole bunch of wires here. It covers every possibility of every model of T6.1 that we've been able to find. You'll have more than you need in most cases. You've also got blue and red clips. The blue ones are for the wider diameter cables. The red ones cover all of the narrow diameter. To have a look at those in a bit more detail, we'll do another little video just showing how they work on a clearer background than we have in the van. And we'll also do a video showing how to take them off in case you find that you need to reverse what you've done. Once you've got them all in place, tape up any loose wires, spin your seat carefully just to make sure that you've got plenty of cabling in there. There is plenty of cabling, and then yeah, you're good to go. You'll find that your seatbelt sensors will work, your heated seats will work, and yeah, job's a good one. So that's the summary of how to fit a double seat swivel in a VW transporter. It's essentially the same process, whether it's a T5, T6, T6.1, with the exception for the 6.1, you've got the additional wiring to do to put the extension cable. And once you've done it, I think it genuinely does open up a lot more space in your van. We've made a few other minor tweaks to this design to the previous one to make it a little bit easier to fit. And we've got the holes that fit onto the floor. We've got a few ovals rather than holes, just to allow for a little bit more variation between the vehicles. I hope you enjoy fitting it. I hope you really enjoy the swivel when you've got it in your van, and that it really does give you a lot more space inside your car.